Hey everyone, Matt Valeo here, CEO of Phenom Poker. Got a great opportunity today to speak with our newly signed ambassador, Alec Torelli, and also sitting with Poker Hall of Famer Brian Rast to just hear their thoughts on Phenom, the poker industry in general, and crypto. So first of all, thank you so much for spending some time with us, Brian and Alec. We're super excited to have you on the Phenom team. How did you guys meet?
Well, we've both been in poker like 20 years, so we met a long time ago. I remember the first time, I would guess the first time we played was probably online. That was probably at the Valeo. Yeah, I remember we played on F-Tops, like the tournament. We both final tabled. You got like third or whatever. I ended up winning. That was kind of crazy. Justin Smith was there too, so we had like some big names, like people that ended up being big in poker, like kind of were at this final table together. That was, the biggest tournament online at the time. And then we were both early to Bellagio. Like we were, playing in the Bellagio at 2005, 6, 7, whatever it was. Yeah, it's crazy.
So I imagine you guys mostly need no introduction to most of the people watching. Brian Rast, recently inducted to the Poker Hall of Fame, 3-time PPC winner. And Alec, obviously a beloved content creator, high stakes cash game player, and both having history starting in the good old days of online poker. I would love to just kind of get your guys' take on the current state of the industry. Like, there's a lot going on right now, in the particularly in the online sphere. And maybe one at a time, you can just walk us through kind of, what was your thought process and wanting to join a new project.
Personally, I haven't been as involved with the online poker scene. I'd say, especially in terms of being playing for years. I was just recently, with Virtue Poker, and part of it is like I'm very much into the crypto scene, and I've been playing a lot of live poker. I mean, a lot of things that project didn't really work out, but I do believe there is a really interesting ground for crypto applications to be used in poker to help out. One of the ones that we're doing now with Phenom is, kind of saying, okay, well, the US has these weird, arcane, in my opinion, really bad, like banking laws that make it really tough for Americans to play poker, even though it's not illegal online. And basically crypto kind of around that, using USDT, USDC, and not into pegs. And so to me, like that, and some of the other ideas that can make it mad were really good. And so, I'm a player. I'm just very into crypto. I like the idea of an online site kind of taking advantage of a lot of the new applications and things that are possible. And I'm excited. I think Phenom was here to do that, and do it in a way that respects and values the players, right? And that was another thing, kind of that came to me, seemed very clear from everything you were saying. Like, you really care about fairness. I mean, I think it's huge issue like modern poker is that if computers getting stronger and stronger, it's like solver tools are being able to be applied for RTA and all kinds of ways that you can, essentially cheat when you're playing online and get advantage, and makes the online sphere kind of really difficult animal to come at. And, I just, talking to you in our conversations made me feel that you really genuinely want to try to do something about that. And so, I feel like here we go. This is a shot for a poker site, take advantage of some of the benefits of crypto, while at the same time, try to do it in a way where players can earn rake back. We're going to try to do something about RTA and other, kind of fair competition problems, and do something that's, good for the poker world, good for people just trying to play a fair game online. And so here I am. I want to.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think he said it really well. I think Phenom is at the intersection of the two things that I'm most passionate about in life. I mean, poker and crypto, and it's kind of like that concentric circle where it overlaps. And this is like Phenom's in that perfect sweet spot. I think it's really cool that I think, like what Ras said, like a lot of the traditional online poker, it's sort of broken and it's hard for people to play. It's hard for people to know where to go. It's people don't have necessarily a place to trust it. Fees are high to move in and out of fiat. Like there's a lot of things that are a very big challenge with online poker. And I think Phenom, with your direction and your like vision, really made it compelling that they're trying to solve that. I think the community owned nature of Phenom is very cool in that traditionally, and we've talked about this, before, that a traditional corporate structure is kind of two different parties with competing incentives. So the corporate structure wants to extract the most value out of the players, and they want to keep those profits for a small group of shareholders that get all of the financial upside at the expense of the players who are getting their benefits taken away. They have less rake back, they have less benefits, they have less things going for them. They don't have a say in the management or the operations of the poker site. And they make their voices heard, and it's kind of falling on deaf ears. And we've seen that in the poker landscape time and time again, which I think what Phenom does really well is it's a community-owned site. So if you own, if you have Phenom tokens, you have votership rights in the direction of the poker site. So you could submit a proposal, and if the community wants to vote on that proposal passing, then that passes. And that's like a way that the Phenom protocol is governed. And so I think it's kind of like having poker Twitter, except that if poker Twitter, takes a poll and there's consensus, that would be implemented. And imagine a world where that happened, and imagine what online poker could be like if that was the case. And I think with Phenom, we align incentives to have that possibility where, you as a player are now an owner. You are a shareholder as a player because you're earning rake back, and those tokens are ownership. And so I believe it's a better structured model that instead of having diametrically opposed incentives, we now have aligned incentives between the players and the owners, because the players are the owners. And so the players and the owners, they want what's best for the site and the community. And so I think it really is a paradigm shift, and it opens the possibility to have a new governance model and a new system that could potentially solve, what Rast said, some of these challenges with online poker, and just overall create a better experience for the players, for the community. And so I'm really excited to be a part of it too.
Let me just add one thing to that. And I think a very common critique of this model, I've already heard it levied, is that especially initially, the players won't really have very much say, because you can just look at the distribution. Initially, it's basically like the large loading block is going to be founders, investors. A lot of the tokens still take a while to get vested into the community. I actually think this is like a benefit, because early on the site needs to have like kind of just strong central leadership, make decisions. But what's going to happen with this model is, over time, some of the people who own a lot are likely to sell, and out of the, I think it's 50% of the tokens?
Yep.
Right. For the community, they get vested, and over time, that number 50 will be greater than 50. And so greater than 50% of the, eventually of the tokens, it could be much higher than 50, will eventually be distributed and owned mostly by players in the site. And that means at some point in the future, there really will be like a pretty decentralized kind of decision-making apparatus. So if you want to think about it, it's a site that in the initial part of it, yes, a lot of the decision-making will be centralized, even though some owners will be able to vote and, maybe like levy things that get heard. But over time, it gradually, and I think that's like a really interesting concept. And so to me, like the way it's designed, the more I think about it, is like a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, I totally agree. And I think like in a game show, if you have a phone a friend option, like the crowd is usually right. And so if you have that crowdsourced idea, and you could leverage the idea of, the crowd and all the players that maybe everyone owns a couple hundred tokens, but there's tens of thousands of them, and they're all saying, hey, this is what we want. Good, submit a proposal, vote, and let's do it. And like the crowd is usually right. So Phenom leverages that alignment of incentives to kind of have more brain power than any one central owner could have. So yeah, anyway, it's really cool.
I mean, I really couldn't have said it better myself. It was something that we really thought about and thinking of a decentralized ownership model. What are some of the things that could go right? What are some of the things that could go wrong? Like you said, Brian, there have been a couple questions out, particularly by, crypto adopters, because we've seen it in crypto where decentralization is not always a good thing, right? So, we needed a way to create a distribution curve where we could move fast, operate, make key decisions early, but we wanted to make sure that there was an alignment of incentives that was perpetual, that, as we become more decentralized, the community always has a voice. So it's designed that way. And we hope that it goes exactly like you just described it. So thank you so much for, helping the community to hopefully understand the model better, and we're going to be releasing more content to discuss that more. So we talked about, Phenom being at the poker of crypto and poker, and I think there's a lot of inherent overlap. I'd love to hear from you guys how you guys originally got into crypto. You guys obviously both have an interest in both crypto and poker. Our poker audience, I'm sure, is fairly familiar with your guys' poker exploits. But how did you guys get into crypto? When was it? And I would love to hear kind of your current involvement in crypto as an investor or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we I don't know if we have a similar story, but we were both living in Macau early on, and crypto is a way that it's kind of a currency that is universal, and so it's kind of like a central currency where everyone could use it. And so a lot of times when you were in Macau or and traveling around the world, people were like, oh, I don't want euros, or I don't want this, and like, let's settle in Bitcoin. And so it became a big part of the poker community, obviously also with online poker as well, where a lot of sites were accepting Bitcoin. And so I think like the poker community got onboarded to crypto out of a necessity as like actual of a use case. And so that happened quite early on. And I feel like maybe my crypto story is kind of similar to other people's, where you never really, it's hard that the first time you hear about Bitcoin that you end up understanding it and becoming a believer. So I remember, the first time I heard about Bitcoin, just being at a poker table, like in Macau, and people are like, oh, you want to swap Bitcoin for, I need HKD to play in the big game. You have Bitcoin, and like people are, and I'm like, oh, this is stupid. Like, why would someone want that or whatever? And so I just remember like, I guess the horror story of passing on Bitcoin the first time I heard about it. But I got really involved in crypto in like, early 2017 in, the next cycle when I like passed on it the first time and then got involved in it and just really went knee deep down the rabbit hole and started to understand the problems with, so I think crypto takes you down like a very big rabbit hole of, history and what is money and the problem with traditional fiat currencies. And I started learning about, why did the Roman Empire fall and why did their currencies collapse? And they started like, cutting the corners of the currency to like debase them. And so you start learning about all these things that you never expected to learn about. You're just like, wait a minute, I just want to buy this cryptocurrency and see if it goes up. Then you start learning about the history of money and all these sorts of things. So I went down this like very long rabbit hole and spent hundreds of hours trying to study and learn about it. And then really came to the belief that there's a huge problem with our current financial system, and fiat currency is like destined to lose value over time. And it's really unfortunate because it eats away at the savers because they are saving in fiat currency and their currency is getting debased through inflation and, being printed the money more often. And so Bitcoin sort of solves that problem. So then I became very excited about this, libertarian sort of movement where it's like solves this problem of central banking and fiat currency. And then really from there went down the crypto rabbit hole and spent a lot of time, becoming a believer in it and investing in it, and then over the last 7 years, spent a lot of time, learning about other cryptocurrencies, trading, investing. I think poker and crypto are very similar in that they use like a very similar framework of investment, asymmetry, risk reward, bankroll management. And so I enjoy the game of trading crypto, even though I think a lot of the rest of crypto is speculative, whereas Bitcoin has like a very clear use case. And so mostly an investor in the space and just a very big believer in it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I had heard a little, here and there about Bitcoin in previous years, like I don't even know, but 2014, 2015. I wish then someone who I'm respecting that had sat me down and had
We have the same
lunch conversation, or, I got, somebody's email, somebody really sharp email who was like, yeah, put 10% in Bitcoin because of ABCE that I know some people got, but I didn't. And my initial reaction was, wow, this sounds kind of dumb. Like, why do I need like an all my money? Then around the end of 2016 and early 2017, I kept hearing more. And a couple of good friends of mine, I remember I went to lunch in spring of 2017 with really a friend of mine with the kind of idea being, I was like, hey, let's go, talk to me about Bitcoin. So we were there for a couple hours. And initially, Bitcoin obviously, as Alec said, got onboarded for its just very practical use case for gamblers, especially travel. Even though I did end up using it some for that, I really mostly got involved as an investor. Like after that lunch and after I started going down the rabbit hole, I just became very convinced about how good of an investment Bitcoin is. Like, I just more and more severely orange pilled, as the community likes to say. And really, Bitcoin to me became a place where, you know, I was very successful at poker. I had a lot of cash. And one of the questions, you know, how much cash do I really want sitting around? And one of my answers, like, hey, maybe I want like less cash just sitting around waiting, like, to be used in a poker game and more Bitcoin. And so I just started buying. And unlike other gamblers, like if you talk around the poker community all the time, you'll hear like, oh yeah, I had this Bitcoin, but then, you know, I lost in sports and I paid people.
Yeah, some horror story.
I never paid anybody in Bitcoin. It was like, I accept Bitcoin, sure, for payments, but I said pay me Bitcoin because Bitcoin's an investment. Like, and really, I mean, it basically, like, the way I would phrase it is, if you make the time horizon long enough and you asked me, I couldn't sell, what would be the investment that I would pick that I have to hold? And I think once the time horizon gets long enough, Bitcoin even eclipses real estate, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just like, if I was like 50 or 100 years and I just have to wake up and I have something today, to me, the answer is Bitcoin. And it's not even really fucking close. Yes, not even close. It's not. So, like, you know, I'm severely orange pilled. That is what it is. It also doesn't mean I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin, but I'm never going to sell all of it. I'm not even going to sell most of it because I think it's the best investment we can have. So here I am. That's how I got involved. And, you know, kind of like you, I didn't start buying until 2017. Obviously wish that I had gotten in sooner, but no, that was still plenty early. And I've made my views very clear. I probably the thing I tweet about most now.
Yeah, I tweet about half about crypto.
I've written multiple articles. I've given investment thesis to people out there, because the truth is that I really believe in it. I'm really happy. Sometimes I hear people respond to me on Twitter like, well, you know, thank you, Rast, for writing this. It's really helped me get involved. And, you know, that just makes me feel good about it, because the truth is, it's like, you know, it's like that world's greatest man. It's like the world's most interesting man meme. And I'm waiting because I'm going to tweet this, but it's like, once we get to 6 digits, it's probably going to happen later this year, be like, you know what? It's not very often that I tweet incessantly about like why you should buy something and invest in it. But when I do, I'm right. I'm just going to tell you, it's like, I'm going to be right about Bitcoin. I believe it, like, with every ounce of my body, that it's way harder than people think for it to fail. It's like the best. And like you said, it's investment. It's an equal opportunity investment.
Yeah, it's hard to find those things.
Take real estate in Manhattan, or you want to pick somewhere where it is very scarce and it's high value and it's probably going to keep going up. But even again, who knows what happens to the city over 100-year time horizon? Why I'd say Bitcoin or real estate. But problem is, those investments are expensive. Like, one of those apartments, millions of dollars. So it's like, if you're not rich, you can't really access that great way to store your fiat.
Yeah.
And, you know, the stock market, it's like, well, now you have to be good at evaluating companies and whether they're overvalued or not. You know, really, like Bitcoin, you can buy sats.
Yeah.
Like, any amount of fiat you want to put into Bitcoin, you can. So, you know, it's like, you just, boom, store some value. That's amazing.
I feel like we need a separate conversation about orange pill. We're going to go on all day. Anyway, yeah. We have Rast and I, we met up last month or whatever, and we talked like 2 hours about it.
Yeah, we were at Robo's Christmas party.
Yeah.
They spent 80% of my time there talking to Alec about Bitcoin and crypto.
Yeah, it was wild.
My next question is going to be, how do you feel about Bitcoin?
Yeah, please don't. Please skip that question, please.
I'm kidding. All right. So one of you mentioned, I think it was you, Brian, that you guys spent some time together in Macau. I'm sure the audience would love to hear how that came to be. You know, can you tell us a little bit about that experience, the games?
Sure, yeah. So I was one of the first kind of like foreign players to go to Macau. I actually went there. It later became known for the super big games with like Paul Fuad and Star World and things like that. But I actually went there a couple years before that with some buddies and played, and then that actually caused the game to go private because I'm starting to get big at the win. And then all the big players were like, I have this one set.
I remember this.
Epically big. And it was like, you know, people would joke to me later on. You got like white people kicked out of Macau kind of joking. And then they went and played, actually not illustrated Star World, but another local casino. But then a year went by and the games in Macau were tiny, but then as the big games started, I think money was trickling down. The games got big again, and I kind of started going back to Macau like a year and a half later, mostly to play at the Win, although occasionally I actually did get to play in Star World. And it was around that time, Alec, you're going to have to place it in turf.
Yeah.
Like 15 years ago or 14.
Yeah, I went in January of 2011. It was my first, and so I went because I heard the infamous story of like Rast got white people kicked out of Macau because he won so much money, and we all went with the same group of friends. Right.
But then later when I started going again, and then Alex started coming, and we actually stayed in the same apartment at least on one trip, and like I would go maybe 4 times a year. Each trip would be for like 2, 3, 4 weeks for a good couple of years there. And the games were like just amazing. It was kind of like this secret that was wasn't like a big secret in the poker world, but there were some barriers to entry. You had to like get a decent amount of money over there. You couldn't be like a total scrub and still beat like the decently big games, but they were quite soft. They have this setup where they VIP seats open for like legit VIPs. So no matter what, if you were playing in a game that wasn't that good, there was always a chance a VIP could come and directly get in, even if there was a list. So
we actually created that structure. Like we basically, because the problem was the VIP would go to the other game, and then it was like, hey, we were playing here all day. Yeah. So we created this little yellow manila envelope with an X on it. And so anytime Mr. X comes, he could sit in the big game that was already running.
It was, and it was it was a great little poker trip. Like I would go over there, and the reason why actually there were some time constraints. I had met my wife and this, but also, I would play poker nonstop for like the entire 3 weeks I was over there. Like yes, or whatever. Just like at the poker table, I do regular like 40-hour sessions, and it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really like the time of my poker career, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, there was a small group of people. I think at one time we counted, there were like 40 regular people that played the biggest game at the Win that would rotate around. And it was always cool because everyone came from all over the world. I mean, we were the Americans, and there were some other groups of friends of ours that were American. But then there were, the Norwegians, there were the local Chinese pros, there's the British, the Swedes, the Australians, because Australia's not too far from Macau. And so there was this melting pot of people that were all the interesting best players in their community that would come to Macau.
Like there would be local.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Like Singapore.
Oh yeah.
I remember sometimes like after the game drinking, going and playing like the big 2 dice game or whatever.
Yeah. It was fun. And then like, we were competing during the day, and then, but before the games, when you put your name on the list at 10 a.m. and then we would go to the gym, we worked out with the same trainer at Macau Fitness. The guy was a beast. And we would go do these workouts together, and then, we'd hang out or go to the pool or we'd go to MGM Cafe and have lunch and talk about poker and talk about strategy. And we would
play Chinese poker.
Yeah. Share reads about other players and like, hey, how do you play against this? What are your thoughts against this VIP? And we'd talk strategy. So it's really cool because, you get to talk and compete against some of the best players in the world. And that was like really a fun challenge. And then he mentioned there were some barriers to entry. Obviously, you have to uproot your life and fly to this obscure island in China where, frankly, nobody really speaks English. The food is very questionable. I got food poisoning multiple times. I was, in the hospital a couple times with an IV. And then also the other barrier to entry is that, there's nothing to do there except play poker. So it's like a very intense mental battle. But you also only have a 30-day visa as an American. So you have a 30-day visa, then you have to leave. You have to go to a different country, physically go to a different country. And then you have a 20-day visa, and then you have to leave for 60 or 30 days. So I was traveling with my wife, and we would spend time, we have 30 days, we have to leave. Where do you go? Well, you're in Macau. You could fly direct to Singapore, Bali, Chiang Mai for $150. You have to leave the country. So it's like, okay, well, let's go to Bali for the weekend. Let's go to Singapore for the weekend. And so it was very cool because we made it into this lifestyle of, hey, we're in Macau playing high stakes poker, but then we could just go to these obscure countries around Asia. I mean, they're not obscure. Singapore's a big world economy, but
we're staying.
Yeah.
My trips were always less than 30 days than back.
Yeah. I was out of the U.S. for
what a problem
3 or 4 years. Yeah, but it was really fun. I mean, then playing in the big game in Star World, I got to play in some of these private games for, that was maybe a year period. There were some times where those games were running at the Win too for a while.
Yeah, and they kept evolving over the years. The game at the Win gradually got tougher, but we were there during like the
The golden days.
Where it was like sometimes the game would start, there'd be a VIP. I remember one session that we were in I'm pretty sure we were both together. This one I really remember. We were in a game and there were already 2 VIPs. There was no VIP seat. And a third VIP came and like wanted to.
Yeah.
Oh, and man. It was really deep because it was like, I think it was
1K, 2K. Yeah.
But like one of the VIPs was like 1,000 big blinds deep. And
they would just buy it $1 million Hong Kong dollars, see that?
Big blinds.
Yeah.
And then all the pros were like at least 500 to 1,000 big blinds deep. And then this VIP came and wanted to play and there was no seat. And it's like, I wanted to get this guy in the game. So I suggested to the table this idea, let's draw. Whoever seat he gets has to sit out, but don't give up your seat. It's just, he gets that seat. And then we have like a rotating.
I remember that. Oh, I was in this game with Mosley.
And we still have this on book. So then basically for a good many hours after this, it was a 3 VIP game where every half hour on the dealer change,
the pros would play musical chairs.
Got up, and then, eventually somebody left and then
they got busted or whatever.
Yeah. But that game was epic. It went for really long. And yeah, that was, just crazy.
I remember you were there and it was the last hand of my trip. You were actually, I think you were in the pot and like someone 3-bet, I 4-bet, and I get it all in with ace, king to queens. And like everyone was smoking, whatever. I just played this flip for like a huge amount, like at the very end of my trip and won this flip. And then I was like out of a big hole and won. And I just remember like so many crazy hands and crazy stories. I'd love to write a book about Macau someday, but we need our own podcast, our own show to talk about it.
I think we could sit here and listen to the stories a lot. And it really, what it takes me back to is the good old days of Rail Heaven online. Because, as cool as these stories are, most people can't access those experiences, right? The average poker player, playing in, Northwest United States or in South America or in some other part of the world, is never going to be able to like fly to Macau and play in $1 million buy-in cash game. Their foray into that experience is watching you guys playing in the good old days online. My quick question to you guys is, what do you think could bring back like Rail Heaven online? Getting the everyday player able to see these games, able to participate, bring them into the game in a healthy way, because you guys were right in the thick of all of that.
Good question. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, it's a little, the most important thing that would bring that back would be somebody who was considered by most of the other players who were going to play that big to be a good thing to play, however you want to term that, whether fish or not. I just, that would be number one. Number two would be, I think a lot of people, the bigger that you play, they're going to be very concerned about cheating, like RTA. And so I think people feel uncomfortable about the site's ability to stop people from card sharing, doing RTA, or ghosting, anything like that being effective, right? So it's, there is a certain amount of, people, the high stakes community isn't that big, so sometimes you might know most other players in the game, but I just think some combination of those two things would be necessary, along with maybe there being some stakes at some, it needs to be quite a decent amount of liquidity on whatever site in order to support that as well. So those three things are needed. I think some comfort with not cheating, liquidity, and then, there being some players that are at least considered, whether or not it's true, by the other people in the pool that you weekend up to kind of support that game. Probably, I doubt Rail Heaven type game just goes with just like all world-class pros deciding to play each other, although that is possible, but nice.
I think, I was going to answer the same thing. I'm trying to think of a unique answer. I guess with the case of Phenom, given that it uses crypto, maybe there's a way to attract people that are more crypto native and less poker native. And then obviously it's kind of a leveraged bet on the crypto ecosystem. Bitcoin's at 60,000. If it goes to 250,000 this cycle, someone has 5x their net worth or 5x their liquidity.
500 1K games.
Rail Heaven isn't that big of a game when you 5x your portfolio in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months, however long this cycle lasts. So maybe there's just a big liquidity event in the sense that a lot of the people that are using crypto are long crypto, and they kind of ebb and flow with the cycles. So that's the one thing I would add. Yeah.
Awesome. My last question for the both of you is, you're both highly accomplished within our community, right? You have a successful YouTube channel and coaching site. You've played all levels of the game. Brian, obviously, having been inducted in the Poker Hall of Fame last year, and with all your accolades, I think everyone wants to know what's missing on your poker bucket list. And we'll start with Alec.
So I guess for me, as a player, I had this really focused goal. I put this out on a YouTube video in my 30s that I wanted the final table to main. And it's sort of like bittersweet that I got 11th. So it's like, I sort of have this goal again of like, did I accomplish that? Or I didn't quite technically, but I sort of got where I wanted to go with that. So I have like this question mark around whether I want to make that like a big intention in the rest of my 30s to like try and make another run in the main. Of course I want to do it, but just like whether that's accomplished or not is kind of like this middle ground. So there is still like, winning a major live tournament or something like that would be cool. That's always kind of like a bucket list item in the sense. But I think outside of poker, I would like to do something where I write a book about some of these adventures of my life playing high stakes poker over 20 years, especially with the main plot being focused around Macau. I think that's like a very unique experience, and that I haven't seen anything like that in poker. And I'm not quite sure it'll happen again. Maybe as the Wynn opens in Dubai or something, there might be another poker boom in a micro economy, not micro, it's a big economy, but like in a specific geolocation that we'll see something like Macau. But either way, I think that story is worth telling, and there's not that many people that lived it in the way we did in the early days, and I'd love to tell that story and see that as a book and maybe turn it into a TV show or a movie someday. And then I think I'm really passionate about with Poker Site and the training is not necessarily helping people be better at playing poker. Of course, that's part of it, but also I think poker's a great game to learn a lot of principles of decision making, and learning game theory, learning risk reward, learning bankroll management, learning to be emotionally in control of your own emotions, and quite stoic and non-responsive or reactive to reality, but rather focus on the things you can control and forget about the rest. And so I think poker teaches a lot of good life principles that people can learn. And so I'm really passionate about growing the game of poker overall. That's part of what I think is interesting about maybe the book or the TV show, is that it'll bring people into learning a game. But rather than just trying to look at it like, oh, I want more fish in poker so I can win money as a player, it's not about that. It's mainly about more people learning the game of poker from a business standpoint or from a competitive standpoint to learn to become, better versions of themselves to some extent. And I think poker really has been that for me to a large extent. It's been like a big education for me as a person. So I'm really passionate about growing the game to that extent.
Awesome. Brian?
Yeah. So, I spent some time thinking about this question, and I think like where I'm going in poker is somewhat related to like where I've come from. And I feel like, at least competitively, probably unlikely at this point that I reach kind of like the same zenith that I feel like I achieved in the last decade as a relative level of strength compared to my peers. I think that zenith probably right before people started being able to study GTO solvers. And while like I'm reasonably interested by solver outputs as somebody who really loves poker, to me, I never really got into poker to study. So like I loved the process of playing prior to solvers, where most of the time was just like looking at very basic like probability outputs and just kind of extrapolating about how to play. And then mostly just thinking about how to exploit my opponents and like adjusting, staying very like focused in the moment in the game in order to adjust and pre-adjust in the moment, analyzing in the moment, and not spending a lot of time away from the game really studying, but at least by the time I got, where I was in the last decade. But then going forward, what does that mean I'm going to do? I do some studying, actually. Number one reason why I like doing the commentary is because I think it's the best thing for my game. I'm spending a couple weeks at Triton, about to go to Korea tonight, and, I'm watching some of the best players in the world who I know do a lot more studying than me. I'm analyzing what they're doing. I got a computer in front of me to check spots. So that's pretty cool. But just in general, I love poker. I'm going to keep playing my entire life. Mixed games are great because at this point, it's like the more games there are, the less likely probably something to study with. So it's like, let's play 20 games, so because of some of that, the WSOP has become a little bit more of a thing that's important to me. I'd say, if you go back, in the previous decade, I was more all about playing cash, and I would play WSOP tournaments. I'd go max late reg a bunch of them, kind of just for fun. But now it's like I show up and, during the WSOP, I don't really play cash. Like my focus is just going and playing 30, 40 tournaments. And though I still don't reg on time, I'm not quite as late as I used to be, and just, playing some cash here and there. And poker is a fascinating game that requires like kind of so many different disciplines within you, whether it's self-control, analysis, logic, probability, reading people, having a sense emotionally where people are, and more. So, I love the game. I'll keep playing the rest of my life. And that's really where I'm at.
Awesome.
Well,
I'm sure the community is going to be very excited to see what you both have in store next. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks everyone for being here. Be sure to sign up for the waitlist if you haven't already. Link in the description below. And thank you, Alec and Brian.
Thanks a lot.